G'day boys, today we're going to be doing another rune showcase video. We've got the balance patch coming up in another 2 weeks or so, so I just wanted to get this out before then, as things will change once the balance patch comes out. We'll be adjusting some more units and changing some things up. So I just wanted to show you guys what I've been running and how I've got everything runed up to this point so far in the season. You can see here we're sitting just inside the top 3000, just inside Guardian rank right now. I fluctuate anywhere between sort of the bottom of Guardian, sometimes dipping just into C3, all the way up to around the top 1000, just depending on how RNG goes and some of the matchups that we get. I do struggle a little bit the higher up that we go. I run into a lot more complete monster boxes and a lot of LD5 units, so it does get tougher for me the higher up that we go. Okay, so here's the monster box that we're using right now. You can see here I've got over 30 units runed up, ready to go. So I do have a fairly complete, comprehensive monster box already fully runed up to give me plenty of options if I want to go first turn, if I want to go second turn, if I want to go into more of an anti-CC, if I want to go into more of a snipe comp. I've got all these options here available for me. There's some bigger missions from this monster box here in terms of what's really strong in the meta right now. I don't have an Oliver, I don't have a Marsha, no Shizuka, no Changpeng, no Dominic. There's a lot of meta units right now that I'm missing, so we're trying to just sort of make do with some of the meta units that I do have, like more Tomoe's pretty much in the meta pretty well right now. Nana's pretty good, Miles not too bad, Windrobo, a lot of these sort of units. So I'm trying to utilize as many of the sort of strongest units that I have, and then just filling in the gaps with what I have available with my monster box. So we'll just go through them all one by one here. I'll just show you the stats on all of them and give a quick little brief explanation about how I'm using this unit, what I'm looking for when I'm drafting the unit, and like sort of what it counters and just how I'm utilizing it overall. Okay, first up here we have the Taeor. So he is on actually one of my better violent will sets. He's actually quite easy to rune now because of the not really necessarily needing the crit rate for his skill 2 now with the guaranteed crit. So we have him on a speed, crit damage and accuracy rune. He's virtually the only one on my account that can actually utilize this really strong rune. So this is why I do have him built, because he can utilize that crit damage rune without necessarily needing the crit rate on it. It's very difficult for me to get units this fast on a crit damage rune and then still have enough crit rate. So because of that, Taeor is realistically the only one that can take this rune, and then because of that, that sort of dictated then that I can have him and use him in the monster box. Now, he's not someone that I will bring very often. I tend to favor bringing Poseidon over Taeor when I need that water CC pushback unit, but sometimes you can actually bring in 2 of these. So it's very strong if I run into a very fire heavy draft, a lot of Junos, Verds, things like that. Then sometimes I will want to draft and bring the double water pushback slash CC slash damage dealing unit, and that's when Taeor really shines. Next up we have the Praha here. She's really strong in the meta right now. I don't have realistically a good enough rune set to run her on violent. I just do not have the runes, and because I'm first picking more, I quite often don't use Praha that often. I've already got a water stripper in the team, so it's very rare that I would double up with the Praha as well, but it is very strong, and every now and then again she is very viable. So if it's a very fire heavy draft again here, and there's things like a Shizuka in the team, a Juno, just these sorts of things, Praha can be very strong. So I do have her runed. It's not ideal being on Swift, but I'd rather have the stats that she needs to be able to perform in my monster box than not have her at all, or have her on violent, but then she's useless because she isn't speed tuned to my box. So because of that, I've just thrown her on a Swift will set on the speed, crit rate and HP, and she does the job pretty much that I need her to do for those very select niche moments that I want to use her. I'll just show you the artifacts on her quickly too. We just got additional damage, some extra accuracy for the sleep here, and then just some additional damage on the left side as well. Next up we have the Wusa. Again, not something that I would draft too often. Usually if I'm looking for an immunity unit, I tend to favor the Riley. Again, because I first pick more, I've already sort of got a water unit in my draft, so then when I need an immunity unit, I will pick up the Wind Riley as opposed to a second water unit with Wusa. But every now and then, if I want a double immunity, and I can draft him later on in the draft, so he's just runed up ready to go as well. He's on a violent will set. We've got some extra skill 2 recovery here, and then just some minus damage from wind on the left side as well. So he's not something that I draft very often. I tend to play sort of a more aggressive play style and don't favor a lot of these sort of more support units, but he is there just in case, and he does get used from time to time. Next up we have my Poseidon. I've kind of got a bit of a utility Poseidon here, so he's not super squishy. He's a little bit squishy, but he's not super squishy. He will survive a single Diana transform, so he won't just get completely one shot straight away. Reasonable amount of attack, good amount of speed to be spooching my box. I prefer to run a crit damage Poseidon just because of those. Again, I'm running into a lot of Junos and things like that. I do need to get the damage out from him as well, and then with good accuracy as well. So he's kind of a utility, damage, support, with his CC, having good accuracy, and a little bit tanky just to survive. Like I said, mainly you want him to survive a single Diana transformation because they'll quite often transform on skill 1, and then when they can't kill the Poseidon, you then get to push them back, and then they're stuck in human form. So it's a little bit of a bait sometimes to get them to transform. He is on another Swift wheel set, so ideally you would run him on either Despair or Violent, but for me to get him on crit damage with that accuracy at this speed, impossible for me on Despair or Violent. So we've gone for the Swift wheel set here. Speed, crit damage, and attack. I've gone for some more skill 3 accuracy here just to make him super reliable. So we're up to 80% accuracy now for his pushback on skill 3. And then I've just gone for some damage dealt on fire on the left side here. Again, the main thing that I need with him is trying to kill Juno. And also you do want to dismount that Marsha as soon as possible with him as well. Next up we have Samuth. He's just on a Rage wheel set. Reasonably fast still as well though, because I can sometimes utilize his skill 2 skill increase cooldown as well as the slow, so I do like to have him a little bit faster. So it is kind of a little bit of a hybrid between a nuke Samuth and a sort of CC Samuth, but that's why I've sort of gone glass cannon, as much damage as I can possibly get out, still having a reasonable amount of crit rate and crit damage as well, so do big damage. We've gone for some attack proportional to lost HP on the left side, and then some more attack proportional to lost HP on the left side as well here. Just so when he does revive, he has very low HP. It ups the amount of attack that he has and just ups the amount of damage. Very rarely can you bring Samuth. He doesn't really fit in the meta right now. But every now and then, if I'm really speed chasing and they have no sustain on their side of the field, we will go this Samuth here and utilize him as a nuke Samuth. So when they do kill him, he will just revive and hopefully one-shot what's left of their team. Okay, next up we have the Moore here. Now, like I was saying earlier, Moore is my first pick basically for this season. Unless he gets stolen, I'm virtually always first picking him. He's the strongest unit that I have in the meta right now, as well as leave my options open for pursuing turn 1, which is always my priority in terms of playstyle. But if I need to, I can use him as a kind of a bruiser slash annoying sort of toxic unit, being on the Despair set here. He does offer a lot of value in the stuns, as well as with his passive. Constantly sort of negating some damage that's being done to him and giving him an extra turn just to help him turn cycle and just get back to the strip. So you can use him more as an interrupting sort of unit as well as a bit of a bruiser, and that's why again he's got a little bit of HP here, but still really good attack just to deal with Douglases that are in the meta, and then really fast. And he is on my absolute best Despair wheel set. We've gone to speed, attack, and then I've just gone some extra accuracy here because we were a little bit lacking, so we're up to 77 accuracy now with his strip, and then just some good additional damage on both sides as well, just to really pump out that damage. He does a lot of damage, like I said, with just taking so many turns with that turn rotating that he has with his passive, and just additional damage whenever you use his skill 3 being a multi-hitter. It can just sort of slowly chip the teams down, and that's why you can use him in those sort of bruiser turn 2 playstyle as well as the turn 1 playstyle. So he allows me to have that flexibility with my draft in terms of which direction that I want to go. Okay, next up we have the Nana here, another one on the Despair wheel set. We've got the speed, HP, and attack here, just some additional damage, a bit more accuracy, and then some minus damage from wind here. Nana, really strong unit still. She's been nerfed a couple of times, but I will bring her sort of late in the draft if I'm going more of a CC style and I see that they're sort of pivoting into an interrupting slash snipe type team, just trying to get rid of one of my units straight away. I'll then quite often bring the Nana. So she's good into things like a Mo Long. You can use her into a Daphnis. You can use her into any of these big sort of single target snipe damage units. She also works quite well into the Leo Ragdoll comps as well. they quite often only rely on getting some procs and getting a kill to get rid of some units at a time. But with the Nana in the team, it does provide you that little bit of sustainability through the revives, as well as the snowball mechanic. So I will still bring the Nana sometimes, but more of a 4th, 5th pick for me. The other time that I will pick up a Nana is if my Moor gets stolen. Quite often my draft then will pivot straight into a turn 2, fairly hard turn 2 anti-CC team with the Riley and the Nana here, sort of just trying to combat the Moor, and then I go from there either into a Bruiser snipe comp if they slow down. I can speed back up a little bit if I wanted to with things like the Robo or a Swift Verd. Or we can pivot into more of just a full hard Luxac comp with the like Antares and the Diana and maybe a Kinky and things like that. They're just to sort of basically trying to survive whatever they're trying to do. I want to survive. All right, next up we have the Miles here. He's a new addition for me. I only summoned him recently. Very, very strong unit. He pairs incredibly well with Oliver, which I don't have, but he still actually pairs quite well with some of the other teams that I have here with the Moor, and is a very, really strong first turn potential unit. I pick up a lot of wins with him just because of his skill 2. Being so fast with his passive, I can bring this into things like Gianna, and it's a 100% chance to strip, minus obviously the res check, with only a 50% chance to stun. So it's not the most reliable thing, but I have won plenty of matches where I get to go with him because he outspeeds with his passive, and then I do get to strip stun their unit, and just from that alone, it instantly wins me the match straight off the bat there. So he's on a violent shield set on a speed, HP, and HP. And then we've just gone for some more skill 2 accuracy with that strip stun, and then some minus damage from wind on the left side here as well. Alrighty, next up we have a Vanessa. Again, not something that I will utilize too often. Both the other 33 speed leads are sort of fallen off in the meta right now. They're not the strongest, but it is good to just have them ruined up there. You never know. There's so many times in Summoners War where you'll simply win as long as you outspeed them. So having 33 speed leads and having really high base speed, impactful units is a great way for you to just pick up some sneaky wins here and there against those really, really fast first turn Andy cleave teams. So because of that, we have her rune just ready just in case. She's on a violent revenge set here, just on a speed, crit rate, and attack. We've gone for some single target and skill 2 crit damage and some crit damage, just some more damage basically, trying to get those kills if we do utilize her. And then some damage dealt on wind with a little bit of minus from water as well. So a bit of extra damage while a little bit more sustainability. Next up we have my Revenge Verd here. So this is my triple Revenge Verd. He's a little bit squishy because I favored him to be faster with the plus 158 speed. This is quite fast for a triple Revenge Verd, but I do like to have him move virtually straight after my team. So I can sort of, once my whole team goes, I can boost them back up. I do have some units like the Moor and the Wind Robo that absorb things as well. Same with the Tomoe, it also has the absorb in their skills. So them being able to utilize their skills and absorb a little bit of attack bar, then with the Verd following up behind them, it can quite often push them back up to full attack bars and then get an extra turn in before the opponent takes a move. Just allow me a little bit more potentially RNG with a stun out of Despair stun out of Moor, or a skill 1 extra stun with the Tomoe, or potentially not getting cut between skill 2 and going straight into skill 3 then with my Wind Robo offering the hard CC. So he is a little bit fast, he is a little bit squishy, but from the way I use him, he does work quite well. I've opted just for some additional damage on the left side, and then we've gone big minus damage taken from water on the left side here, just to try and help him survive just that little bit. Okay, next up we have my second Verd. So I actually run a Swift Verd as well. So I like to change it up a little bit depending on where the draft is going. If they're looking more of a slower type comp, so especially if it's like a Nana, if I see a first pick Nana, I'll quite often draft the Moor with a Swift Vertihile here. Swift Verd still works incredibly well into those really slow bruiser teams where they're just looking to survive. If you can bring enough CC with your Swift Verd, you'll just take so many turns and get so much damage out that you'll just whittle them down before they even take a turn. So still really, really strong Swift Verd, and it's great for me being able to have both options here available. So if I'm looking more turn 2, I'll go for the Revenge Verd. If I'm looking to take first turn and sort of control the match myself, I'll go into the Swift Verd here. So we have him on a Swift Blade set, just on a speed, crit rate, and a resistance. I had this really strong resistance rune. We've gone for some additional damage on the left side, and I've gone for minus fire on this side here. So this one here I like to specifically bring into marshes, and that's why we've gone for the 100 resistance to try and resist the defense break out of Marsha, as well as the minus damage from fire, just to try and keep it alive. And this does help a little bit with the fact that it is even squishier than my Revenge Bird, but like I said, this one here predominantly is me taking first turn, and then I'll quite often bring it with pushback units like the Poseidon, like the Tail, or control units like the John here, just to try and stop things from taking a turn. With the Marsha though, that can be a little bit more difficult, so because you can't push her back, hence we've gone for the 100 resistance build on this Vertihole in particular. Next up we have the Antares. So I've opted for a HP Antares here. We've gone for some attack up effect and just additional damage by attack, and then some just a sort of general purpose here, some additional by attack, bit of minus from fire, and some damage dealt on wind here. Just wanted to just absolutely load him with stats. The thing with the Antares is he can be quite toxic in terms of when he takes multiple turns in a row, and the best way to try and make sure that your Antares is taking more turns is to have him alive. He's so RNG, he's usually the first thing that everybody wants to try and get rid of, so having him this tanky will just soak up as many hits as possible, give him more time and more opportunity to proc and get those kills and get the damage out, as well as then leave the rest of my units still alone, untouched on the field, because they're still trying to focus him down, and then they can potentially get some damage and get some kills out too. So I prefer to have him super tanky. Any of the units that I think is going to be the primary focus for my enemy when we're having a match, I favor putting them on as tanky as I possibly can, just so they take a lot longer to die and give me that more time that I need for me to get my team online and get what I want to happen to start happening. Next up we have the Tessarion. So you can see here I've gone for another quite tanky one. I've foregone the crit rate and the crit damage on him because I wanted to have him tanky enough. Again, he's one of those units that I bring him into a lot of passives, so when he gets through, typically that's the unit they want to get rid of straight away, so their passives then can actually be fully activated on the line and don't have to worry about the Oblivion. But I also want to have him quite fast, so for me I've had to sacrifice the damage but go for the tankiness with the HP and maintaining the speed. The reason that I have him so fast is because I need him this speed, so he will interrupt my Tomoe. My Tomoe will use her skill 2 to strip a unit and potentially put the Karma on. My Tessarion, because he's so fast, then takes a turn to potentially put on the Oblivion, and then the Tomoe can go into her skill 3 and spread the Oblivion. So I'm virtually using him in conjunction with Tomoe as an AoE Oblivion unit, and that's why I have to have him so fast. Now he is on a violent will set here. We've gone for the speed, HP, and HP. Like I said, wanted him nice and tanky. We've gone for some skill 3 accuracy here just to get him up to 79 accuracy. It's close enough for me. You know, I can't quite get everything to 85, but I'm just trying to look for efficiency here. I don't want to sacrifice 3,000 or 4,000 HP just to get an extra few accuracy. I'd rather just roll the dice, and if it happens to be a 100 res unit, we're still odds on favorite to land our Oblivion anyway. And then on the left side here, we've gone for just sort of a multi-purpose one, some minus from fire with some damage dealt on wind, because obviously I'm seeing a lot of Marsha and a lot of Oliver. Because I don't own either of those, they're virtually getting picked against me every single match. So just again, kind of a tanky utility to Sarion here. He's not necessarily there to do, he still does do some damage, but he's not necessarily there to do the damage and to kill the units himself. He's more there just for that Oblivion and to soak up a few hits for me. Next up we have the Daphnis here. So Daphnis is on a Swift will set. Again, if you could get this onto a violent set or something like that, that'd be insane, but I just can't. Most of the violent units that I've got sort of already runed up, and then the Swift units are sort of the ones that I do after the fact, where it's like, okay, I would like this unit in my monster box, but I don't have the rune quality to use it, so let's just put it on Swift. At least then the stats can do the job that I need it to do, and we just don't then get the extra added bonus, the extra added RNG of having the violent proc chance. So it does take a little bit away from my chances of winning, but at least I can perform the role that I want it to do with the stats on it. So the Swift will set, we've got the speed, crit damage, and attack. Gone for some extra skill 3 accuracy here, a little bit of skill 2 accuracy as well, with the skill 2 offering the resets and cooldowns, so I do want that to land. And then we've just gone for some minus damage from water on this side and a little bit more damage dealt on wind. So I will use him typically, it'll mix him in with a sort of CC comp. If I'm noticing that they've sort of got one unit that is sort of the link for their whole team, the glue to hold their whole team together, and Daphnis can potentially snipe that out. We'll run sort of a CC team and then slap a Daphnis in there to give me that snipe option as well. And then they either have to face my full CT team, or they have to face like a variant of, I don't know, a slightly weaker CC team, but then risk losing one of their glue units straight away, and then their team will just fall apart. And I've got enough damage from that point to just kill the rest of the units. So this is how I sort of use him. It's still a really, really strong unit. And without having things like Marcia or something like that, this is my sort of fired single target damage dealer that I utilize. Next up we have the Joe Gunn here. He's on a leftover despair set. He's just on a speed, defense, flat defense, and attack, just to get him fast enough. We've gone for some additional damage and more additional damage on this field side here. I very, very, very rarely use him. He doesn't really have a good enough rune set for me to warrant taking him up in the Guardian ranks, but sometimes he can just be a sort of a force ban, or sometimes it is sort of cool. So he's just here ruined, but I might bring him one in every sort of 150 matches or something like that. Very, very rarely. Next up we have the Douglas. I've actually been utilizing my Douglas quite a bit lately. He's been getting a lot of wins for me, a lot of wins. I'm seeing a lot of people that are just running very, very sort of stock standard CC cleave teams that can't necessarily deal with the Douglas. So I'm kind of using him more as just a force ban, so to allow me to get my premium team through. So I can, if they're going CC cleave and I'm really trying to outspeed, I can go the Moore and the Ashir, and then at the very last end I have to pick the Douglas here. So then they can't kill the Douglas. Force banning the Douglas means that then I'm guaranteed to go first turn. Well, not guaranteed, but it makes me my fastest team possible with the Moore and the Ashir here. So then I can bring two sort of extra damage dealing type support units. So I could go Moore, Ashir into, say, Poseidon and John. So I have strips with big damage and follow-up, as well as a very fast first turn booster to give me that first turn, and they have to let that team through or they get soloed by Douglas. And what ends up happening a lot of the time is they know that they can't beat that team, so they'll ban something like the Ashir so they take first turn, or they'll ban my Moore so get rid of the speed lead again so they take first turn, but then they just get soloed by Douglas. You know, they might have a very, very small chance to beat Douglas with something like a Sekhmet or things like that potentially has that attack break it can land on it. But the problem is if they've already got 3 other wind units in there, the wind units are going to glance anyway, and they quite often will just cleanse the Douglas if it has got an attack break. So he picks me up a lot of wins because people just can't deal with them. They draft in a way that requires them to force ban it, but then if they force ban it, well then they're going to lose to the rest of my team anyway. So he's very, very strong in that role and still an incredibly good 5th pick unit. You just can't pick him early in the draft, because as soon as you pick him in the first 3 slots, then they'll just bring 2 things that can kill him at the end. And I see a lot of people bringing Douglas when there's already 1 or 2 things out in the field that can kill him. So that is not how to utilize your Douglas. You definitely want to be bringing him last, and only bringing him when there's either only 1 thing that can kill him, and then you can potentially ban it, or at least make your opponent think that you're going to ban it, or when there's absolutely nothing that can kill him, and then it is an absolute must force ban. So he's on a Vampire Blade set here. The reason I've gone for the Blade is just stats. I can't get these stats on a Nemesis set. If you could, great, then run the Nemesis, but for me, I need the extra crit rate. So we've just gone for the attack, crit damage, and attack here. We've gone for a little bit of life drain, counter attack damage as well is pretty good on him. More life drain and more counter attack damage here. Damage dealt on fire, again, we're seeing a lot of things like Juno, Marcia, these sorts of things. I typically don't like to bring him into a Marcia because she can kill him, but you know, I see a lot of Carnals, those sorts of things as well. So he's pretty good on the damage dealt on fire, just to try and get rid of those fire threats earlier, and then he'll solo the wind units after that. Next up we have Tomoe. She's another one that I'm utilizing a lot. I quite often will pick her in 2nd slot or 3rd slot, or you can utilize her later in the draft too if you wanted to. She's on a Despair Will set. We've gone for the speed, HP, and accuracy with just additional damage and some minus on fire on this side here. Again, I just want her to survive and be sort of tanky enough and get her role done. She pairs incredibly well, like I said, with the Tessarion. She pairs incredibly well with John because she gets to spread all those bombs and you get 2 bombs on things. So because of that, Tomoe works well with Tomoe works well with anything basically. If you get the Despair stun with Moore, or the stuns out of Robo skill 3, the slows and the defense breaks out of Savannah, this potential strip stun with Miles, she can then spread that, so she gets to spread any of the debuffs. So incredibly strong, slightly underrated unit I think right now in the meta, and I would actually say that she's probably the third strongest speed lead in the meta right now, Oliver being number 1, Moore number 2, and then Tomoe I think is in third slot. So typically if I'm seeing an Oliver first pick, which is probably, I don't know, 20 out of my 30 matches every day is an Oliver first pick, my counter to that is straight away the Moore the Tomoe. It just leaves my options open from going first or second turn. Both of these are still quite tanky and can work well with support units like a Riley, a Nana, Verd for turn rotation, things like that. A Molly even if you really want to go tanky and survive. So I can pivot into a turn 2 playstyle with those, but it also sets me up incredibly well for my first turn aggressive CC / snipe comps that I'll run, because I have my double speed lead there as well straight away. So because I like to, it also, as a result of me drafting double speed lead into the Oliver, will quite often push my opponent to go, oh, he's trying to race, and then they'll push themselves a lot faster, putting down things like Ethnas and Sekhmets and that sort of stuff. At that point, I'll then give up on first turn, but I still have 3 units to draft into the second turn sort of Luxac or second turn Bruiser sustain playstyle. So it just leaves my options open, and quite often my opponent doesn't recognize that I can still pivot into that playstyle, and they end up pushing themselves too fast and then not having enough juice to kill all my units. Next up we have John. I've been utilizing John a lot, like I said, because I'm using Tomoe, he's just that much stronger again. Again, I also don't have, without the Oliver and without the Changpeng, I'm missing some reset units, so his skill 2 does have a reset on it, so it is pretty good for me to be able to utilize that from time to time. It's okay to use into some things like some Josephines and that, sort of. It's not ideal, but just having the reset on him as well can be pretty good, and just to have it in the team, basically. It's an extra skill that he'll be able to bring to the team, but the main purpose for him obviously is just the fact that he can bomb. The 1-turn bomb is so strong because you can put the 1-turn bomb onto an immunity unit just to keep the immunity off, and put your 2-turn bombs onto everybody else, and then hopefully you can spread with Tomoe. But if you don't have the Tomoe, usually then if you can just control the immunity unit or the cleanser and keep it off it with the single bomb, hopefully they don't violent proc, but you can then just control their team that way, and then the rest of the units sort of can't really do too much, and if they proc then they're procking into the bombs as well. So the single bomb on him is incredibly strong, and even the 2-turn bombs too, because I'm running a Despair Moore. If Moore goes and will stun some units, well then now I know that I can put a single bomb onto a unit that's not stunned, and then the 2-turn bombs that goes onto a stunned unit, well now I've got 2 turns of CC on that unit. It straight away loses 2 turns straight off the bat with the Despair stun and then the 2-turn bomb put on top of it. So incredibly strong unit. We've got him on the speed, attack, and attack. I like big damage out of him. I would like to get him a little bit tankier if I could, but again, for me with my runes on this speed, having the good accuracy and getting enough attack on him just to make sure that those bombs do damage and start killing sort of the units straight away. So we've opted for this. We've got a little bit more bomb damage here with just some additionals, but mainly for the bomb damage. And then on the left side again, we've gone minus from fire. So you can see a lot of my units here right now I'm running minus from fire. Marsh is the sort of biggest damage dealer in the meta right now that I'm sort of having not trouble with. I can definitely deal with it, but in terms of I'm seeing it virtually every single match, and it's the hardest one for me to control on the enemy side of the field because I can't push it back, and it's constantly giving itself immunity. So because it's the most difficult thing for me to control fully, and I'm seeing it every single match, this is why I've opted for virtually minus fire on most of my units, as opposed to things like, say, minus wind. Because minus wind, where I'm seeing more Olivers, Oliver doesn't do as much damage, so he's not as much of a kill potential threat, he's more of a CC threat. So that's why we've gone for the minus fire. Next we have the Delphoy. She's just on a violent will set, speed, HP, and HP. She's just like on a leftover set. Again, sometimes you run into those teams, the Leo, Ragdoll, Verd, Molly. We've all seen them. We've all seen those teams. We all know they're out there. If you're playing that, take a look in the mirror. But we all know it's out there. So if I'm drafting into those and I'm first picking them more and then they start going down that route, that's when I'll go into the Tomoe, maybe try and steal their Verd from them. But if it's too late, I'll go more Tomoe and then I can go Tessarion. At this point here, a lot of people recognize, oh, Tessarion's like a very difficult Oblivion unit to deal with. I'm just going to ban it. So they already know that they're going to ban it, and that's when they'll pick up 2 more passives, say a Nana, a Molly, things like that. So at that point there, that's when I can pick up the Delphoid just to give me the second Oblivion. And then now they have to deal with an Oblivion plus a spread unit. So I've got either 2 units that can give me with the Tomoe AoE Oblivion, or they have to leave me the 2 separate Oblivion units, and now I can individually Oblivion 2 of their 4 passives that they've got on the field. So it just basically means that a lot of those passive teams there can't deal with what I've got, and their team will just fall apart as soon as you can get a couple of Oblivions on some of their units. Next we have the Jemiah here. He's on a Violent Will set. I'm thinking about changing him over to like a double Nemesis, either double Nemesis Will or just double Nemesis or triple Nemesis or something like that to potentially deal with Gianna's or Veronica's. Off Will if it's going to be dealing with Gianna's, but for now he's just ruined on a speed, crit rate and HP set. We've gone for some sort of skill 1 crit damage here, and then just some damage dealt on water on this side, a little bit of minus fire again. I don't use him a great deal because usually if I need another speed lead, I'll typically favor Tomoe, but he does sometimes, depending on what draft I'm seeing, work quite well. I do see every now and then some quite water heavy drafts with the Mo Long, Bolver, sort of those sorts of teams. So if I'm running into those, I don't necessarily want to go the Tomoe. That's when I can go the more Wind Robo, and if I need another speed lead, that's when I'll pick up a Jemiah. He works quite well with the Wind Robo, especially resetting all of his skills. So he is ruined. Don't pick him very often, but when I do, he does fill that job pretty nicely. Next up, we have the Leo. He's not quite finished yet. I've still got to do some more grinds and things like that on him and just try and sort of optimize him a little bit more here, but again, I don't pick him too often. I am starting to utilize him a little bit more now that I've got both the Verds sort of ruined up. I'm picking Verd quite early in my draft, so it does leave the option for me to go into a Leo if I'm seeing they're running like a similar team to what I normally run, honestly, with the more Poseidon, Savannah, things like that. If someone steals my draft from me, well, I know what counters me, and a lot of the time it's a Leo, so he is ruined up, ready to go, just in case basically someone steals my draft. He's on the Violent Nemesis set with just the HP, crit damage, and attack. And then we've got some more skill 1 crit damage here, and just some, again, minus from fire. So you will see a lot of people still bring their Marshes into the Leo. I know that the Leo sort of cucks the damage from the Marsha, but still with the defense break, it still quite often will still kill your Leo. So we've definitely gone for the minus fire still on him as well. Next up, we have the Xingzai. We've gone for a speed, crit rate, and HP build. We've got some just skill 2 accuracy and some additionals, and then again minus fire again here. So you can see virtually everything's on minus fire right now just because of the way the meta is. I don't utilize him too often. This is one of those situations where he's got a high base speed, so I sort of could rune him up as well. Not on a very good set, but on a set that's good enough. I will bring him sometimes if they're going Oliver and I'm giving up on first turn very, very early and they haven't taken the Marsha. They haven't gone very fire heavy. They've gone, say, Oliver, Changpeng, things like that. A lot of AoE units or wind units that necessarily won't be able to control him too well. That's when you can potentially get the revenge stun out of him, just to sort of interrupt and just sort of break that cycle from those CC teams. Once they get on a roll, it's very difficult to stop them, and that's where interrupting units into those teams where they need the entire team sort of go and keep going for them to maintain their advantage. Xingzai can be a great potential RNG interrupter with his revenge stun. Next up, we have the Ganymede here. Really fallen off in the meta right now. He's on a Violent Will set. We've gone speed, HP, and accuracy. Additional damage on the left side and some more additional damage on the right side as well. So he has fallen off a lot because why would you use Ganymede as your resetter when you can use Oliver, who does it every single turn, as well as offer a 33 speed lead? Or why would you use Ganny when you can use Changpeng, who resets the entire team and gives you defense breaks as well? So it just doesn't have the utility as some of the other resetters right now, but because I don't own those, this is what I'm using. We got to utilize Ganymede from time to time. If I'm running into a lot of Josephines, Abelios, he's pretty good into Shizukas as well, and Voices, things like that. As long as you can get the strip off, then you can sort of reset these big water threat units. So I do utilize him. The ventilate on his skill 2 does pair quite well with certain units that I'm using as well, like the Poseidon or the John or the Robo, just to give them their skills back, and then I get to do it again, right? So he's still very, very strong and potentially usable in the CC Cleave team. He just isn't as strong as some of the other units. So if you have those, typically that's what you'd want to use. If you don't, he can fulfill the role. And this is sort of like what I'm doing with my monster box, right guys? I don't have all the units that you would want to ideally use because they're the best unit for the job. So I'm just sort of filling in with what I've got and trying to fill those roles as best as I can. Next up, we have the Diana here. I've detuned her a little bit just to take some runes off her to sort of fill out some other units because I don't use her so much. Typically, again, I like to favor the first turn sort of a team, but every now and then I like to mix in the Diana as well with some of my CC comps, and she pairs quite well with the Nana too. So if I am pivoting more into a turn 2, try to survive playstyle, that's when I'll pick up the Diana. It also offers that interrupting mechanic as well, just to try and break their cycle, interrupt them, and then I can either potentially try and snipe out a unit or put shields up to try and keep me alive so I can survive their initial burst, and then I can come back from there. So she's on a violent will set as well, HP, HP, and HP, with some additional damage by attack, mainly on this side with some other additionals, and then minus damage from water. The reason I've gone for minus from water on her is because realistically, I don't want to be bringing her into a Marsha or a fire heavy team. I will only bring her into some of the very, very water heavy teams like the Molong Wusa comps that you still see them running around from time to time. They're not as popular now, but there still definitely is those teams. And that's when I'll pick up this Diana here. So we've gone for the minus from water from her because a lot of those units like the Molong and the Wusa are still running the damage dealt on wind and super, super tanky. This is why I've opted for the triple HP build on her, because I want her to survive. A lot of those teams, the win condition for them is to kill the Diana on first turn. When they can't do that because I'm so tanky and I've got the minus from water on them, that's when they virtually alter match from there. They didn't kill the Diana, the rest of my team gets to go, and then Diana still is alive, still able to do the big damage, and will take out 1 or 2 of their units pretty quickly. Next up, we have the Savannah here. You can see here again, I've opted for more of a tankier Savannah and just sort of gone for more like raw stats and foregone the crit rate and crit damage on her, because I did want to try and get her accuracy up while maintaining this speed as well. So we've gone for the Violent Will again here, speed, attack, and HP. I've got some more skill 3 accuracy on the right side, and then just some additional damage on the left side here. Just want her to survive, and as well as I want her to land that pushback as reliably as possible. So more of a utility Savannah that I want to sort of soak up hits. Again, she's one of those units that she's so threatening that a lot of people like to target her first, especially looking for the dismount. They want to get her dismounted as soon as possible to get rid of her skills while she's on the beast, the strip and the pushback. So having her that little bit tankier means that she can survive a Dominic proc even as well, things like that. So she just is able to survive that first turn unexpectedly, and then sort of can take over from there, get some skills out, or even if they do manage to kill her, she's still really strong because she still provides that damage that's still on the field. And I'll pair her quite often with the Nana too. All the Beast Riders pair quite well with the Nana because a lot of the time they'll dismount the Beast so they can't have their skills available, but then they have to leave the damage dealing human off the Beast form on the field because they can't kill it with the Nana still having an orb, or it comes back on the beast, and it's just a very inefficient kill, giving back the 2 lives. So because of that, they'll quite often just leave them sitting there, and you can get some damage out that way. Next up, we have the Wind Ryu here. So I haven't quite pulled the trigger on him yet in terms of the Devilmon, so I don't utilize him now very often because he's not fully skilled, so he can't really perform, and especially up in like Guardian ranks, guys. Like if your unit's not deviled, it's not skilled up, it's not going to perform, and it's not really going to do the job. But I did have a set ready for him, very similar to the Daphne set here. It's just another Swift will set on the speed, crit damage, and attack. Just another one of these sort of sets left over. I got plenty of these Swift sets. You can always build a plus 170 odd sort of crit damage Swift unit. So it's a good way again for me just to fill out my monster box a little bit. I'll wait and see what's happening with the balance patch, and then I'll decide whether or not I do want to Devilmon him and fully skill him. But he is there. I do use him every now and then if I'm pivoting into a full snipe comp with the Daphnis Wind Ryu combo there, both offering me the strip potential nuke kill sort of a unit. So he's not too bad just to sort of fulfill that role. They're virtually identical, right? He's just the Wind Daphnis. That's how most people describe him, and is fairly accurate description too. As far as artifacts go, we've gone for some more skill 3 accuracy and skill 3 crit damage, and then just some single target crit damage, as all of his skills are all single target hits. So own turn, 1 target crit damage is pretty good on him. Next up, we've got the Wind Robo here. So I'm using a lot of Wind Robo right now. Very, very strong unit, and a great replacement if you don't have, say, a Chung Pung and you're trying to run that CC cleave team. The weakness for him though is the same with Chung Pung though, to be honest too, is the Verd. So this is why if I do bring Robo, typically I'll have to bring him in either 4th or 5th slot, knowing that I can ban out their last pick. Or if I want to bring him early, which I do sometimes, I'll go the more into either a Swift. Usually it's the Swift Verd with the Robo. If I go more and then they draft quite slow with a Nana and Riley or something like that, you know, they're really going, you know what, there's no speed here whatsoever, 0 speed threats. That's when I can pick up the more Swift Verd and the Swift Robo. So I now have a speed lead with my 2 Swift units already in the team. I have 2 strippers with my Moor and my Robo. I don't need to worry about the Verd being drafted against me because it's in my team. That's the main reason that I bring him in that comp, so it doesn't get drafted against me. Not so much because I necessarily need him. But yeah, just definitely sometimes if there's an issue with your comp in terms of what it's weak to, being able to incorporate that into the team will just give you a lot better chance of getting the win at the end. So that's why I'll draft it in that way, and then I can pick him quite early. And then what that leaves me then is 2 more picks to go what sort of damage dealer / CC / pushback / threats, right? What threats do I want after that? I've got everything in the team in terms of setup already there with these 3 units. And then that's when we go for, okay, now what are they drafting? And then I can counter pick my last 2 picks to get the like I said, the threats and the damage out that I need. Next up, let me just show the artifacts on him. We've just gone for additional damage artifacts on him, and minus from fire again, right? Minus fire with this one, especially on the Wind Robo, because he will just get absolutely pumped by a Marsha. Again, you can't really push her back or control her very well with the Wind Robo too, so definitely want to be running minus fire on that one. We've gone for the speed, attack, and accuracy build. He does need accuracy. I would love to get him faster. It's just the problem for me is without having Swift quads. You can see here I've got 29, 29, this is a 27. This one here is a quad, but also because I have to run an accuracy rune on this slot here, this is the fastest accuracy rune I have on my account. So there's not really much I can do at this point without getting sort of a quad accuracy rune or getting a quad Swift rune. So this is sort of the speed that we have to run him at. The bad thing about that is it means I can't bring him necessarily into a lot of those speed battles. If anyone's actually trying to take first turn, we cannot bring this Robo because it's way too slow up in the Guardian ranks, and that's when we'll have to then pivot into something like the Ashir or the Ginger Brave instead. Next up we have the Riley. She's just on a violent will set, speed, HP, and HP. We've gone for some skill 3 recovery on the right side, and then minus fire on the left side again here. 100 res. Ideally you would want her faster than all of these units, so you get the attack buff on, like an attack buff John, an attack buff Poseidon, an attack buff Savannah. That'd be the dream, but I just cannot. I do not have the runes, violent runes left over, and I prefer to sort of take her more when I'm pivoting into a turn 2 playstyle anyway. So I won't usually draft her with these sorts of units. I'll typically go much slower and bring her with the Revenge Verd or the Nana and things like that. So because of that, ideally you would want her faster. It would work better with the entire monster box, but with the way that I draft her and utilize her, it is fine at this slightly slower range. Next up we have the Ginger Brave. So I'm actually legitimately using, I'm not joking about it, I'm not trolling with him, I'm legitimately using Ginger Brave whenever I do really want to contest and push for first turn. Again, for me, no Triton, no Sekhmet, so a lot of the really high base speed, impactful units on first turn just aren't available. I do have an Ethna, but she's a little bit more RNG. You need to get them below 50% health to guarantee the stun, whereas with him, it's just a strip reset, so it's a lot more actually reliable, I've found, than the Ethna in terms of getting that advantage on first turn, as well as like you can use it into Sekhmets because the reset doesn't matter if you glance or not, the strip doesn't matter if you glance, and the reset doesn't matter if you glance. So he's actually very reasonable to bring into a Sekhmet and reset her on first turn before she then gets to reset your team. So great unit for that, with the obviously with the passive giving him it's an extra 30 speed when he's at full health. So this is effectively 341 speed right now, and he's just on a Swift Nemesis build as well. So we've gone for the speed, crit rate, and HP, and then we've just gone for some skill 2 accuracy here, and then some minus from wind, because I'll typically bring him a lot into Oliver's. Whenever I'm versing someone who's really going first turn, they're virtually always taking Oliver because it's the best speed lead in the game right now. So we have opted for some minus wind on this unit in particular. The Nemesis set isn't necessary, to be honest, but I just had these fast Nemesis runes and thought, well, you may as well, right? You may as well get some extra value out of him. By having an offset that does something. A revenge set would also be pretty good as well, with his skill 1 offering a potential stun. What does it go up to? 50%. So it goes up to a 65% chance to stun. So I have run revenge on him in the past, but I think they're being used now on my Verd instead, those runes. So because of that, we've just thrown the Nemesis set on him. It does potentially get the cutoff if into things like a Triton or something like that, if they don't push him back, or they don't push him back enough now with a little bit of a boost from the Nemesis set. It can sometimes cut, but realistically with 340's odd speed, you've got to be taking first turn anyway. Next up we have the Ashir. So this is the other unit that I'm using, right? So if I'm really wanting to contest speed with my more first pick, we've got the Ginger Brave and we've got the Ashir. Ginger Brave will be later on in the draft. He doesn't offer enough utility, whereas the Ashir you can actually take quite early. You can still pivot from the Maw and the Ashir into more of a bruiser playstyle as well. The Ashir is so tanky, being a HP unit and utilizing HP runes really well. He's so tanky that you can then pivot back into a really thick bruiser comp that they just can't kill. If they're running a very low damage sort of a CC type team, you can pivot back with the Revenge Verd, the Ashir, Riley, these sorts of things. Just make it very difficult for them to kill you. And with the Ashir then also being tough to kill, he just cycles through and also offers that heal into the team as well. So a little bit of sustain. So he's a unit that you can pivot either way with still. And because of that, I'll bring him, I won't be afraid to bring him very early in the draft, sometimes even second and third picking him. So he's just on a Swift Blade set. We've got a Speed, HP, and HP. The reason I've opted for the Blade set is because I have this really incredible, this is one of my, I've only got 2 quads on my account. This is the other one. This was the first one here. This one, and then this is the second one here with this Blade rune. So, and I had a really fast HP rune, so I thought I may as well pair these. It doesn't get him the highest amount of crit rate, but it is a little bit more crit rate, so it's just that tiny little bit of extra damage, as well as it just utilizes the set and makes him really fast. So it definitely sort of made sense to me just to put the Blade set on him. We've gone for some more additional damage on him as well with the speed on both sides here. This one's a pretty good one. Just a lot of additional damage by speed. So he'll actually do quite a fair amount of damage as well with that additionals, with his skill 3 being a multi-hitter. But it's also, like I said, that little bit of crit rate. Next up we have the El Sharion. This isn't something that I utilize very often. Usually I'll bring him as a 5th pick if they're running like a Wusa Shizuka type comp, right? Something like that, where they're running a lot of CC, a lot of buffs for their team. I'll just pick him up because quite often he just gets banned out because they don't want their stuff being stolen, as well as he's the always reliable strip. He strips on every single hit, on every turn that he does. So he's just on a Violent Will set, speed, HP. I've gone for some more accuracy on this side here, and then we've just gone for some, I don't know why, damage dealt on water, but again, because, well, we're bringing him into Shizuka Wusas, a little bit of damage dealt on water isn't the worst thing. He's not ruined up the absolute best. Some more crit rate would be ideal. A crit damage set would be ideal on him too, but that was more speed. But again, I very rarely will take him. As long as I can get him to around the 30k HP mark, he'll stay alive to sort of do his job, and then he's sort of on the field. But I'll only bring him maybe once every few days, something like that. Next up we have the Molly here. So I'll, again, just sort of if I'm pivoting into a turn 2 play style, we'll pick up the Molly. It's on a speed, HP build. We've gone for some skill 3 recovery on this side, and then some damage taken from wind on this side. I don't utilize it too often. It's quite slow. But it's okay. It's a Molly, right? You just throw it in there against some of those sort of CC teams. Like if my Maw gets stolen, I don't mind bringing. If I'm facing a Maw Changpeng, I definitely don't mind going a Revenge Verd and a Molly early on, as well as then later on in the draft. I always like to potentially set up into those CC teams with a Douglas last pick too. So then Molly and Douglas pair really well together as well. So she's just there as that support unit, she's a little bit gross, a little bit toxic. She can sort of, you know, sometimes she'll do nothing. Her passive won't activate at all. But sometimes just having that passive on the field is really, really annoying. And it's one of those units that those CC teams just don't like seeing, because if she glances too much, their team just doesn't get the CC out that it needs, and it can't perform the way it needs to. And lastly, we have the Kinky here. We've just got him built super tanky again. I've gone for the HP build. Some skill 1 recovery, bit of additional damage on this side, and then we've gone some minus fire, minus wind, and minus water. So I just sort of really tanky, really tanky. I just want him to survive, 100 res. Don't draft him too often. There's too many despair units. There's too many units that stun right now in the meta. So he's very difficult to bring. But if I'm going into a very low damage, sort of additional damage type team, and I've got things that are out there that can't be reset, like a Riley, and some sustain out there for him, maybe even with like the Molly or the Verd or these types of things too. These two, Kinky Douglas as a last 2 pick, can sometimes be quite strong if they don't have enough damage out there to kill either of them. Then you've sort of won immediately, because they have to ban one, and then the other one just can't be killed with the sustain that you've got out on the field. So still an okay unit, but he's definitely not as strong as what he used to be. But that's it today, boys. So that's all the units that I've sort of got roomed up right now. I wanted to do one now. I know we have a balance patch, like I said, coming in another week or 2, but I just wanted to get this out now just to sort of show you guys and maybe give you guys some ideas on what you can be running to. Especially if you don't have a lot of the meta units right now, you can definitely still build your monster box. But anyway, boys, that's it for me today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.